Okay, hi, this is Michelle. This is for the week of October 16th, responses to things that were questions in the assignments and comments that I wanted to acknowledge. And this is my last week with you officially, so after this, I won't be doing this process. So if you have things that you want responses to, Dr. Adams will take over and she can do that. I just wanted to let you know that I've really appreciated having this kind of back and forth. And I've noticed that you're asking more questions, which is great. I love that. So I'm going to dive in here. So one of the things that we did this week was look at learning stories versus writing observations or as a way to write observations. And I think there was a question or something that caused me to put here writing observations about a child versus to a child. So I just wanted to point out that a learning story, which we read about this week, is something that is written to a child as if you're telling them something you noticed that happened with them. And you're removing your judgments about it unless you're, needing to say something to them that you want them to know, but being really careful about that. So I did want to point out that most things that we do in writing about children are about them, but these learning stories are written to the child and the family responds to them, the child can respond to them. It's considered a dialogue versus that the teacher's observation about the child is the end of the story, so to speak. That's how I like to think of it. That the observation to a child is the beginning of the interactive story that the two of you and the family will create together. I hope that kind of makes sense, just as an introduction to the idea. And there are a lot of Head Starts in the country now that have adopted this, so maybe you'll even encounter it someday in your own teaching life. So here is a statement about indigenous worldviews, placing humans as part of nature, etc., etc. I would like to learn more about these beliefs as well as how they can be incorporated in our classrooms today. So that is really wonderful. First of all, I'm so glad you want to do that. And I'm going to refer you to the work of, hold on, I'm going to pull this up on my screen. Robin Wall Kimmerer is her name, and she wrote a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. Let's see if I can get it to come up here. Okay, yeah, there it is. So you can see Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. But I want to point out her name here, Robin Wall Kimmerer. So she has a book for adults that's quite substantial, and you may or may not want to dive into something like that. I've read it a couple of times over the years, and it's always a big commitment. Recently, I started listening to it actually on tape because I've just come to appreciate that. So if you want to listen to it on tape, it is available to do that. But there's also now, just this year, a new version of the book for middle schoolers. And I think for an adult who just wants to kind of dive into this initially, that would be a really good start. I also I'm going to write her name here in this document so you guys can all see it. Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you Google her, she's got talks on YouTube and online where you can just listen to her explain this philosophy. I can't recall her tribe. I believe she's lives in the upper north end of Maine. But regardless, it's a really important look at this whole understanding of things. And even if you want to get really specific, you can look at a talk she has about the gift of the strawberry. I'm going to put strawberry there. So let me know if you want more information. I have all this in another class that I used to teach, um, and I can send it to you in an email. It's worth knowing because if you're teaching any kind of science, especially to young children, it would be really good to have some background in this idea, which is why I introduced it to you. Okay, can they be shared in a public school classroom? Absolutely, and they are. Actually, Robin Wall Kimmerer is a biology professor. So she comes from both worlds of the indigenous point of view and then the Western science point of view, because she's a biologist. So she absolutely can be taught and is taught quite a bit. I have a friend who was a biology teacher for her whole career, and she taught her work the whole time. So yes, you can definitely do that. Then it says, I wonder if this was considered or talked about when play spaces were created. I wonder if this is more beneficial. Yes, it is. In terms of spaces and risk-taking and natural elements, absolutely. I hope you saw that at Thrive or Swallowtail, depending on where you went. More nature-themed play inside and outside. Yes, and I love the idea that you're thinking already about bringing the outdoors indoors so that children can explore it in both spaces. Sometimes you're not allowed to be outside as much, or you're not outside in spaces where there are natural materials. So yes, please bring them in your classroom. Absolutely. And are these Western practices affecting this age? Absolutely, yes. So just be, aware that you can expand your own experiences and knowledge and absolutely bring it into your classroom. It's all science, and Robin Wall Kimmerer, again, is a biologist, so that's why I refer teachers to her, because she gives you both points of view and lets you use that in your classroom. Here we have, reading this article makes me think about global warming, climate change. Is this pushing away from outdoor play correlated to issues today? Absolutely. What you don't know, you can't love. What you can't love, you don't protect. So that's a pretty, just basic rule. And that's the rule about climate change and, the issues we're seeing. Yes. The answer is yes. And I'm glad you can see that. Is playing outside less creating a disconnect? Yes, it is. And it's a problem. So there you go. Works well with young children as they get older and move to regular school settings. Wonder how it will be possible to have forest schools all the way up into high school. Will they incorporate academics? So what Thrive Forest looks like in elementary, middle, and high school is called outdoor classrooms. So if you research outdoor classrooms or setting up an outdoor classroom, those are used in especially high schools, but also middle schools and elementary schools all over the country. And JCPS has them also. So what that looks like in the older grades is called an outdoor classroom. And this is where you take the experience that kids have at Thrive, where they're playing and coming to have a sensory relationship to the information, but not an academic relationship to it. And that's a big difference. So learning happens when you first have a sensory relationship to something, an experience of it, where nobody tells you what you're experiencing. Nobody tells you the names of everything you're looking at. Nobody tells you anything. You just experience it through your senses. And the sense of movement is part of that. And then later on, when you experience it and you're in the outdoors, your brain can call up that sensory experience in memory, in your unconscious memory. And now you can start to learn about what your senses took in as a young child. So that's the simple way to explain it. So yes, the best classrooms are outdoors for learning biology, for learning all kinds of the sciences, of course, and for many other purposes also. And there are 2 or 3 documentaries that are really great about this. So again, if you're interested in seeing that, You can just Google outdoor classrooms and you'll see 5 million things come up. They've been in place for decades now, so hopefully that's a helpful answer for you. I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. So let's see here. I'm looking at... Oh, I wanted to just say this. Someone in the class did a really good job of breaking down a lot of the stuff from the chapter this week. And so there's a whole section here about bias, and I wanted to answer this question. So this student has written, if I understand this correctly, Hindu culture does not eat beef and pork. I think that might be true, but anyway, not everybody who identifies as Hindu may adhere to that. So if you want to think about Western religions, the Western religion is primarily Christianity. So does every Christian practice everything that's part of what's considered the Christian faith? Well, first of all, there's so many different versions of the Christian faith that would not even be possible. So I kind of just want to say that, that saying Hindu culture doesn't eat beef or pork, just always keep in mind that what we think we know about a culture may be a generalization, just like you wouldn't want someone to generalize about what Christians do. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. If I said out loud to another teacher, and then the class says to a new student who might be Hindu and ask them if they don't eat meat, is this a bias? This is a really important question, and so I can't remember who wrote this, but thank you for asking it. There's not a simple answer to this, but it's worth asking and thinking about, which I really want you all to do. First of all, before you ask a child anything, do what I just did for you. Break this down. Make sure that what you think is actually true. Because by definition, saying Hindu culture doesn't eat beef or pork is a generalization. Where did that come from, and is it true of this family, right? So if you say to another teacher that a child doesn't eat meat because they're Hindu, I'm thinking that's what you mean, and then a child says that to the new student, this is what is called a it's based on bias, right? But what I would say is that this is more of something that's really prominent in our culture. And I'm thinking that it would be better for me to send the class some information about this, rather than try to answer it completely here. But what I would say is, what would be good in this situation is for you not to say anything out loud to another teacher about any child ever. Anything like this that you want to say to a teacher should be said between the two of you. And then what I would say, if the class says to the new student, if they ask them if they don't eat meat, that could be considered a certain way of interacting that is based on bias. But what I would just caution you to do is allow children to talk to each other as long as it's respectful, and just kind of leave it there. I think that's what I would say about that. That's a really important question. It's not so much, is this a bias, but is it appropriate? Is this an appropriate conversation? And, there's a lot of ways you could look at this, but I would not ever say anything out loud to another teacher like this. So that this wouldn't translate into a problem in the classroom. So what these are called are microaggressions, but I really don't want to get into that here. That's a kind of a big topic. But just know that it can be problematic. And then you have here something someone wrote about this cartoon of the baseball game where children are looking over the fence, and it shows the difference by giving a child a crate to stand on. And it says, sometimes I think society says you're different and doesn't know, and it doesn't matter how different you are, and then group everyone all together in a category and treat them the same, when in reality everyone will have different needs and wants and will need to be treated differently depending on their need. They get the same things as everyone who isn't different, but by the way they receive those needs are different. I'm not sure I understood this one, but what I wanted to tell you was this cartoon is definitely, you've probably all seen it, but it's really not, it's not considered an appropriate way to look at things. So what I'm going to do is try to find the cartoon that's more appropriate. And basically, though, if you know the cartoon and you see the kids looking over the fence, the real way that we achieve, equal access to things is to completely remove the fence so that everybody, no matter who they are, can see the game. So the issue is the walls and fences have to be broken down. So the way things actually become equal in terms of people having access no matter who they are is for the walls and fences to come down, not for them to be given a crate to stand on so they can see, but have the wall still exist. Because as long as the fence or the wall is still there, we have a problem. So I'm thinking maybe that's enough for now. And let's see, then I wanted to go down here. Let's see. I think those were all the questions. I'm just looking through here to make sure. Yep, I think that's all the questions. I did want to just point out to you that I sent you this information about beauty and nature that might be helpful in your Thrive Forest report. And I believe those were all the things that I wanted to include this week.